Hi, my name is Nick, and welcome to Nick's Picks Watch Reviews, the channel where we review watches that I would pick, I have picked, or I might pick. And we talk about the good and the bad. Today, we're going to be featuring the Vacheron Constantin Overseas 4500V in steel with a blue dial. Now, this is offered with a variety of different complications, a variety of different materials, and a variety of different dial colors. But this one is one of the hotter ones these days, and for good reason. It is a beautiful watch, and when you put it on the wrist, I will say it definitely feels like there's something extra there. Now, one would hope that there's something extra there, given that this is a watch from one of the members of the Holy Trinity. Now, we're not talking about the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit here. Certainly that is the Holy Trinity. We're talking about the Holy Trinity of watchmaking. In this case, Patek Philippe, Audemars Piguet, and Vacheron Constantin, which honestly, in my opinion at least, doesn't seem to get as much love. And I don't know if that's really warranted. They do amazing work, incredible finishing. They have a beautiful variety of watches in their collection, and I definitely recommend that if you haven't given them a lot of attention, or you haven't really taken a look at their catalog, go do it. You might find yourself surprised, and you might find yourself as the owner one day of a patrimony, or maybe an Overseas, or maybe both. If you like the dress watch, you like the sports watch, and you kind of want to have a little bit of both in one. Nothing wrong with that at all, and I might have done that. All right, so as we take a look at the Vacheron Constantin Overseas, realize that this is a watch that bears the Geneva seal. Now, the Geneva seal is a mark of quality, it's a mark of precision, it's a mark of craftsmanship. It speaks not only to tests that have been done on the movement to determine its ability to keep time. It's not only a test to figure out, is it going to be water resistant at the stated level, but it's also a verification that the proper finishing has been done to a degree that is incredible. All right, so let's take a step back for a moment and just think about what that really means. If we imagine where watches begin their lives, they begin as really cut or stamped metal parts. And those parts are going to look very raw, and you could technically assemble them together and get a working movement, but it's not going to be very pretty. And in fact, it might not be very protected against corrosion. And you might find that depending on how carefully you crafted those components to begin with, they might not be as precise as they could be. You can have burrs that are getting in the way of things, and it's not going to be great. And so you want to have some degree of finishing done there to ensure that you have at least a decent timekeeping device. And you could actually take that to fairly extreme levels if you'd like. Not that you'd actually have to, though. There are some movements. I could think of a lot of basic Seiko movements that get the job done. They have a very basic finish, but they get the job done, and they're not horrible to look at. There's other movements that try to pretend like they're putting in the effort. They do some decoration. A lot of it's automated through CNC machines that are kind of lining things up perfectly, putting on the Geneva stripes or the Côte de Genève. And it looks okay until you look close. And you realize that even though they did that finishing work, they weren't careful to ensure that there's no tool marks left. And that's one of the things that when you have a timepiece that has the Geneva hallmark, it's trying to avoid having tool marks. It's trying to ensure that the movement looks beautiful. It looks like it was well considered and cared for. And so you'll see that as we get into looking at the Vacheron Constantin Overseas. In fact, you see that across Vacheron's line. You see that as you're dealing with any of the Holy Trinity brands, that they have an extra level of care. And so as we dig into it, realize that not only is it going to be something extra on your wrist as you look down, the way the light plays with the bracelet, the way the light plays with the dial, the way the light plays with the chamfering of the case edges and the bezel. It's also, underneath all of that, an absolutely gorgeous movement. Now, in terms of things that you will notice as we kind of go and start digging into this, and I want to call it out up front, its price tag, its price point is definitely up there, and especially on the gray market. In fact, I would encourage you for this piece, don't buy it on the gray market. The price being asked right now is about equivalent, or not necessarily equivalent, but it's approaching the price of the same watch in pink gold. And I'm going to be honest here, as I look at the steel and I look at the pink gold, I would definitely take the pink gold if it was offered for the same price as the steel. It is also gorgeous. Now, it wouldn't be as wearable. I find that with precious metals pieces, they do basically scratch when you breathe on them. And I'm not opposed to getting scratches on my timepieces, but I also don't want to walk into it and be like, let's just scuff this guy up. I want it to look nice for some time, especially with this elegant tool watch, or this elegant sport watch, rather, something that you're supposed to be able to feel a little fancy in. It's not something that I put on just to, kick around and feel all grubby. And no, I put it on to feel a little fancy inside, because I think everyone needs to feel a little fancy sometimes, especially when you feel down. You should also probably talk to a therapist. But if you just want to feel fancy and not have to talk to anyone, you can certainly, pop this guy on and you feel pretty good inside. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at it. So straight away, what you'll notice is that the dial just captures the light in multiple different ways at the same time. Not only do you have that sunburst pattern, but you also have in the minute track a different finish that kind of alternates the sunburst. So where the dial might appear lighter, the minute track will appear darker. Where the minute track appears lighter, the dial might appear darker. And on the edges of the minute track as well, it illuminates with this kind of interesting gradient that catches the light in a slightly different way. This whole watch is playing with light and reflections. As you notice, the bezel is high polished next to a grained, a more radial graining that's going on next to the high polish. It sits on top of a case that is linearly grained, and then as you go down to the bracelet, you'll find that the edges are chamfered in basically the shape of one of the points of the Maltese cross, which, by the way, that Maltese cross that we see in their logo was actually derived from one of the parts on their early watches that sat on top of the mainspring barrel. Now, for me, my love affair with Vacheron started back when I was watching the Watch and Listen podcast with Cameron Weiss, who actually used to be a watchmaker there. And something captured me when I heard their motto. Their motto was something to the effect of, if it's possible, do better. And it's always possible. And as you look at their timepieces, as you look at their movements, you can really see that embodied there. And I very quickly wanted to find a Vacheron Constantin piece for me. And I wanted to find something that would epitomize the brand. Now, as we think about the Vacheron Constantin brand, we think about, high horology. We think about incredible watchmaking. We think about dress pieces. We think about high complication pieces. And what's interesting is this is not really trying to be a, especially complicated piece, or it's not trying to be a dress piece, although within the Overseas line, there are, perpetual calendars, there are tourbillons, there are higher complications. However, this is, again, trying to be that elegant sport watch. It was coming out alongside some of the designs that Gerald Genta had done for Patek and for AP, and so it was trying to fill that niche. And technically, that wasn't the Overseas I'm talking about. I'm talking about the Vacheron 222, which this was inspired by. This is now the third generation Overseas, with this one coming out in about 2016. Of course, this specific example is from 2021. In terms of stats, this watch is powered by the Vacheron Constantin Caliber 5100, a self-winding movement with 172 parts, 37 joules, and a power reserve of 60 hours. And it has a frequency of 28,800 vibrations per hour, or basically 4 hertz. Now, in terms of the case, it's made of stainless steel. It has a 41 millimeter diameter, a thickness of 11 millimeters, and of course it has that beautiful display case back with sapphire glass on the front and the back, delivering a water resistance of 15 bar, and it does have some degree of anti-magnetism, although it's not specified exactly how much. As for the bracelet, you're going to find that, of course, it does come with 3 options for a bracelet or strap, and we'll discuss that here in a moment, but it is a 23.6 millimeters, tapering down to 20 millimeters at the clasp, which is a deployment buckle in the case of the leather or rubber strap, and in the case of the bracelet, it is a gorgeous butterfly clasp. The handset is lumed with super luminova, and it's quite visible at night for a brief time. And that is actually one of my few complaints with the watch, other than the fact that we're going to find out later the watch doesn't hack. We'll also see that the lume isn't amazing. It does certainly show up. It shows up in the dark a little bit, but because of the thickness of the indices, the thickness of the handset, the amount of lume that can actually be there, you don't really get much lasting power. You don't get much brightness from it over a long period of time, sadly. So I found that my other watches that have larger indices or numerals that are lumed tend to do a little bit better than this one, which is a little bit disappointing. But at the same time, I'm not, wearing this to bed or wearing this deep down underwater compared to maybe some of my other watches where I might do that. As a night on the town, I usually have street lights or other lighting available to me, and it's not really a problem. There are kind of two quirks, though, with this piece that you'll notice. So first of all, it does have an integrated bracelet. Usually that's fine unless you want to actually change things out. And if you find yourself needing to change things out, well, here's the deal. It does come with some options for you. It comes with the option of a rubber strap. So you might find yourself saying, okay, well, a rubber strap would probably suit me nicely, and I want to have the flexibility to switch to that. Well, you get a blue rubber strap right out of the box. And it does have a quick change system for the straps, so you can press a little button underneath and you can basically pop it off pretty easily. You also have the option of a leather strap, a blue leather strap. Now you'll notice that mine are still in the packages. I don't wear it on these, and that's mainly because I love the bracelet so much. The bracelet itself, not only is it beautiful, but it's also very functional. So if I turn it over here and we take a look at the clasp area, you'll see that there's kind of a little extra space in between the clasp and the link next to it. And you can actually get that extra space just by pulling or push. You can get that space back by pushing the link in. And it's kind of like that, quick adjustment of size that compensates for being a little bit extra warm or maybe eating a little bit too much at the last meal. But it really does make the difference, on those days. And I got a smudge on that, but it is something that definitely is there to improve your comfort, not necessarily trying to be something like a dive extension or something extreme. As we look at that, you can see that that's not a huge amount, but it does make a difference. And while we are looking at that, look at that Maltese cross. No matter what angle you place it at, because of how they've done the graining, because of how it's shaped, you can still see that one. I don't know what finishing they've done there. It looks like maybe it's been bead blasted or something like that. Nice burnished looking finish. Quite nice. And it hides a scratch. Did you notice that? So there is a scratch on the clasp. Maybe that's fuzz, I don't know, but I believe it's a scratch, which you don't really see at all angles just because of how it reflects that light. So if you do wear it day to day, which this one does get worn. I'm sorry if you wanted this to be a safe queen or something like that. This one actually gets worn and used. It won't be showing that wear all too much. Now, I know some people are like, I like it to show the wear. You keep talking about showing the wear. Like, what's your problem? I actually don't like to look down and see something that's completely destroyed. If I have worn it and generally taken care of it, I'd like to see it looking nice. Now, with that high polished bezel, you might have some issues where, it gets scuffed up and it doesn't look great. But here's the deal. Even if it does, one of the nice things with how Vacheron services their watches is they not only can do the full service and restoration of basically any watch all throughout the history, going back to the archives to figure out how to even construct the tools they might use or even have some of those tools on hand. But they will also, for modern watches or really anything, they'll do the work to fully restore it to factory fresh, brand new condition. Even if it means laser welding where they build up the material, then polish it down, even if it means just a light polish. So if you do get it scuffed up, scratched up pretty bad, don't panic. Just wait for your next service. And at your next service, you can tack that on. It's actually fairly low cost compared to some of the other options where you can send it directly to a specialist in that area. So Vacheron is going to be the specialist for their watches in that area. All right, so we talked about the strap system. We had that whole long discussion, and I started that discussion with, hey, there's about 2 quirks with this watch, but what's the second quirk? Well, the second one is that it doesn't hack. I mean that if you take the watch and you basically unscrew the crown, do a little crown unscrewing here. It is a screw down crown, very nice. It achieves some water resistance. It keeps the crown in place. It's very good. And you pop the crown to the first position to set the date, second position to set the time, which you can see that I have popped the crown all the way out. The second hand is still in motion. All right, so the second hand continues to move when the crown is out. It doesn't hack. It is hand winding, so if I pop the crown back in, I can certainly still wind the watch without having to worry about, shaking it around to make the rotor move, which you can certainly do. It's an automatic. But it's not it's not hacking. So if you're trying to set it specifically or directly to a reference time or to synchronize up 2 different watches you might have, that's not necessarily going to be something that you're going to be doing with this timepiece. Now, what you could do is you could actually take another timepiece and synchronize it to this if the synchronization is important to you, but you're not going to be able to do that the other way around. All right, so there you have it, the Vacheron Constantin Overseas 4500V in steel with a blue dial, and it is one of the most beautiful, elegant sport watches on the market today with absolutely top-notch finishing from a Holy Trinity brand. If you haven't looked at this one yet, maybe you've been shopping for a Royal Oak, maybe you've had your heart set on a Nautilus, give this a look. Do not forget about Vacheron. They've done amazing work for over 265 years. And when it came to translating their watchmaking skill into the world of sports watch, they knocked it out of the park. Thanks for joining me this week. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed making it, and we will see you next time. Until then, take care. If you like this episode, please be sure to subscribe to both this channel and the About Time channel, give this video a like, and hit that notification bell to be notified about future episodes.